We have our first NFL Saturday slate of the year tomorrow, and some interesting situations to go along with it. My name is Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Friday, December 16th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Starting at quarterback for the Ravens in Week 15, tomorrow's game, will be Tyler Huntley. Coach John Harbaugh confirmed Thursday that Huntley is out of the NFL's concussion protocol. This is per Ryan Mink of the Ravens official website. This is somewhat surprising on a short week, but the Ravens will start Huntley at quarterback on Saturday against the Browns. Now, with Lamar Jackson out with a knee injury, Anthony Brown, the undrafted rookie, will back up Huntley. Huntley's a viable, though low-end, QB1 streamer in this matchup against the Browns, and as we know, this Raven offense has been the complete opposite of a juggernaut this year. They're playing for their playoff lives, though last week's win against the Steelers put them in great position to make a run. In our first running back spot, it appears Jeff Wilson has an outside chance to play on Saturday. Now, Wilson obviously got hurt with a hip injury last week in the Dolphins' embarrassing loss to the Chargers. But he's questionable to play on Saturday against the Bills after being listed as a limited participant in Thursday's practice. Travis Wingfield of the Dolphins' official website confirms. Now, Wilson did not practice on Tuesday or Wednesday, but did get in a limited session on Thursday. Now, the overall lack of practice work still suggests to me that he's more on the doubtful side, but at least there's some glimmer of hope here. But there's also a double-edged sword. The potentially snowy weather could make the run game very important for the Dolphins on Saturday night, but the weather could also put Wilson at risk of aggravation for the injury. He's a flex option if he goes, with Raheem Mostert an RB2 with serious upside if he doesn't. And it appears unlikely we'll have Ramondre Stevenson for our RB2 spot on Sunday. Stevenson didn't practice for the second consecutive day on Thursday, per Mike Reese of ESPN, as he's dealing with an ankle injury. Meanwhile, Damian Harris put in his second consecutive limited session after missing the last two games with a thigh injury. So it looks like he'll play against the Raiders. Now, if Damian Harris goes and Ramondre doesn't, Damian Harris is by far my preferred option here in this Patriot backfield. But, of course, I've been getting questions about the two rookies who both scored on Monday night against the Cardinals, that being Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris. And if I have to play one of those two, it is clearly Pierre Strong for me. The Patriots drafted Pierre Strong, in my opinion, to be kind of a James White type, and that goes in a complementary style to Damian Harris. Meanwhile, Kevin Harris is kind of a no-nonsense grinder who I kind of viewed as the Damian Harris heir apparent in that role. So if I need to play one of the rookies, it will be Pierre Strong. But Damian Harris is far and away my favorite running back for the Patriots if Ramondre Stevenson doesn't go against the Raiders. Romeo Doubs returned to a full practice in our wide receiver 1 spot. Remember him? Doubs hasn't played since week 9 after suffering a high ankle sprain on the first play of the game against the Lions, on which he caught an 18-yard pass. And obviously, since then, we all know what's happened. Christian Watson scored about 1 million touchdowns. And though the Packers have been losing games, there appears to be some hope for the future with their young weapons. Now, the irony, of course, is we haven't really seen Doubs and Watson fully healthy and fully integrated into the offense at the same time. So I'm actually pretty excited to see what happens here. From a fantasy perspective, I can't really be interested in Doubs at this stage until I see more. And Watson, I'm just content to keep riding the hot streak. Now, Aaron Rodgers, though, was really starting to trust Doubs after he posted 4 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown, a really impressive touchdown, by the way, against the Bills in Week 8. So we'll see what happens with this wide receiver rotation, but it at least gives Packer fans something to watch down the stretch in what's been an overall lost and disappointing season for them. in our wide receiver 2 spot, the Texans still have 2 injured receivers, though there was a kind of surprising development on Thursday. Both Brandon Cooks, calf, and Nico Collins, foot, are still dealing with their respective injuries that cost them last week's game. Now, Texans insider Aaron Wilson said on Wednesday that neither was expected to play in Week 15 against the Chiefs, but somewhat surprisingly, Cooks returned to practice in a limited fashion on Thursday, at least giving him a chance to go. The Texans are heavy underdogs. There's a quarterback platoon between Davis Mills and Jeff Driscoll here. And quite frankly, with the Texans, the worst team in the NFL, Cooks has every reason to completely shut it down. I mean, remember, he wanted to be traded at the deadline, and his contract couldn't be moved. Of course, he signed that contract before this season, so, at least he's making good money. From a fantasy perspective, if he does play against the Chiefs, I guess there's some wide receiver 3 appeal here because they have to throw it to somebody. I mean, Chris Moore caught like 1 million passes last week, but it's hard for me to really trust Brandon Cooks coming off an injury when he has every incentive to shut it down. But it at least is something to watch if you have Brandon Cooks on your roster. And in our flex spot, we have literally no idea. Why? Because the Steelers could be starting any of the 3 quarterbacks on their roster this week. Now, Kenny Pickett has been limited in back-to-back practices as he looks to make his way through the concussion protocol after suffering the head injury against the Ravens last week. Meanwhile, Mason Rudolph told the Athletic's Mark Kaboly that he split practice reps with Mitchell Trubisky on Wednesday, indicating Coach Mike Tomlin was not fond of Trubisky's 3 terrible interceptions against the Ravens, which is completely understandable. Look, whether it's Pickett, whether it's Rudolph, whether it's Trubisky, it doesn't really matter to me. Deontay Johnson's going to get 190 targets and not score a touchdown this year. George Pickens can't get enough targets this year despite making great plays. Pat Freiermuth continues to be a solid tight end 1 despite all this situation, all the quarterback turmoil, wherever you want to call it here in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh needs an enema. They need an offensive enema. They need to get rid of Matt Canada this offseason. Mike Tomlin doesn't fire coaches in season. It's probably not going to happen. And at week 15, why would it happen at this point? The Steelers, though, they losing to the Ravens last week basically cooked their goose for this entire season. And it's looking like it's going to be Mike Tomlin's first losing year as a head coach in the NFL. But look, with a rookie quarterback, an offensive coordinator who doesn't know what he's doing, and an offensive line that can't protect the rookie quarterback, it's understandable. But just a bizarre situation there with the Steelers. This has been the 15th regular season week of the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup, and I hope everybody's been enjoying it. And if you're new here, I hope you did enjoy it. Now, the key thing here, though, given it's late December, maybe you're eliminated from your fantasy football leagues. If you go to fantasypoints.com, though, you can at least get an early look at 2023. You can prepare for next year, get our super early bird special at fantasypoints.com. 30% off. It's the lowest rate we'll offer all year. Oh, and by the way, we are, let's see here, about 2 hours away from college football bowl games kicking off. And we have a bowl guide prepared by our Fantasy Points college football team that's available for just $25. If you're in a bowl pool, you like betting, prop bets against the spread picks, it is constantly updated with the latest information to help you guys cash in bowl season. And we all love how many bowls there are. Because why? Because we want to play fantasy and we want to bet. That's why. My name's Joe Dolan. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you next week.